Political candidates are coming down the final stretch of campaigns. Meanwhile, the business of government goes on in the state capitol. We talk about it next on Capitol View. Welcome to Capitol View, the weekly program about state politics and government and about how it might just affect you. Joining me this week on Capitol View is Rae Hodge, editor of the Daily Line in Springfield. Welcome, Rae.
Thank you very much for having me.
Also, Hannah Meisel of Law 360, also based in Springfield. Welcome, Hannah.
Glad to be here.
Well, we're just a few days out from Election Day in the primaries, and it seems like everything's up in the air. Undecided voters in the Attorney General race, I think, was slated at, 40+%? The last known polls. The Democratic primary, still a third of voters not knowing who they're going to vote for. And the 13th Congressional District also, a slew of Democrats going to challenge Rodney Davis. There's a lot to talk about, a lot of races going on. Let's start with the governor's race. There was a debate last night in Chicago. How did it go? I mean, who won, who lost? Any opinions? Hannah?
It was a rough debate. It was a forum, actually.
A forum, I'm sorry.
They sat side by side. It was cozy but weird. It was just after the Chicago Tribune published this big story about J.B. Pritzker's supposed offshore holdings that would implicate him in trying to avoid taxes if that was indeed something that he set up with that intent. And so for at least like the first 15, 20 minutes, they just kept circling back to that. And I do think, it's going to be an issue, but maybe not as big as people think. I mean, remember in 2014, Bruce Rauner was also implicated in, he's hiding his stuff in the Cayman Islands.
Where have we seen this before?
Yeah. And I think, I think everyone pays taxes. Yeah. No one likes to hear that people are so rich who, and they, when you get to a certain level of wealth, you don't have to play by the rules anymore. But, J.B. Pritzker has really refuted this. Today, just now, he came out with a statement, said, I don't even own, one of the biggest companies that the Tribune cited. And it's, beyond the J.B. Pritzker tax issue, Chris Kennedy actually came out looking fairly strong. He is notoriously not always the best with the press, as we all know.
But getting better.
But yes, getting better. Is it too late? I don't know. Dan Biss, he kept circling back to, I'm the middle class candidate. Yeah. I'm the best choice. Look at these people arguing, and I'm the reasonable one. But, they got their swipes in on Dan Biss pretty good.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my question is, rightly or wrongly, the thing about the offshore accounts, I'm not sure whether that's as much that he had offshore accounts, or did he lie about whether he had offshore accounts? Because he had made some supposedly fairly strong statements in December saying, there's some trusts out there that I don't know anything about that were set up in the 1960s by my grandfather, I believe, and I'm a beneficiary of these, but I have no knowledge or control. And that's what the Chicago Tribune story seemed to challenge, that there were some, at least one trust that was set up, I think, in the last 7 years that has somehow invested in Surprise, a boat tour company in Chicago. I mean, what do you think, Rae? Is it whether he lied? Is it the fact he has the trust, or does it matter at all?
Well, being as close as we are to the primary, I don't know that the nuance is necessarily something that's going to be a deciding factor for a lot of people going to the polls. I think this close to the race, while there is some contention still, while there's plenty of undecideds out there still, I think it's easy to get lost in nuance when you start talking about, trusts, offshore taxes, possible havens. A lot of this gets really murky, right? As soon as you say things about offshore finance, eyes start to glaze over.
Right.
But I think that plays pretty well to Daniel Biss's position of being the middle class candidate or whatever, because you can sort of ignore nuance in this way. You can say, well, here's this rich person, and we have all, every single person that's been reporting on this has, remarked that this is a battle of enormous proportions when it comes to checkbooks here. It's a checkbook battle in a huge way. So having a leading, front-running, very, very wealthy person suddenly have a cloud cast over it, I don't know that the nuance is really going to be a deciding factor or sticking. I think it's, just maybe the headlines might be enough given how close we are.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that I've always wondered about is when Bruce Rauner comes out and says, J.B. Pritzker, I will kick his behind in November. No question about it. Absolutely. I mean, he guarantees it like he's Joe Namath in the Super Bowl. If that's the truth, then why has he run ads against J.B. Pritzker, the Democratic primary, if he's so certain that he's going to win? I mean, why
would you focus on a primary opponent that you have the option of ignoring and downplaying for a long time? There was not a significant amount of press about Jeannie Ives, and he was afforded the opportunity not to have to battle Ives.
Yeah.
I mean, you can try to draw J.B. Pritzker, if you're in the Rauner campaign, you can try and draw J.B. Pritzker into an advertising war with you early on before the primaries, but you're not going to do that out of, or at least most people wouldn't do that out of a desire to get the campaign funds spent. Rather, you're going to do that so that you can appear to continually be on screen. That's one motive possible. Another motive possible is you want to appear to be fighting an enemy. I'm not ascribing motive here, but I am saying that definitely was the impact. The impact was that Rauner got to be on screen, he got to have a campaign ad, and he got to appear to audiences in such a way as to make him appear very active within the campaign, all without really having to address Jeannie Ives.
But it still does the trick, though, because, I mean, like Jeannie Ives, recent poll numbers do seem to point that she is a threat. Will she win? I mean, no. I think we all, unless like something insane happens, I think that people have seen what they've seen of Jeannie Ives, and Illinois is still Illinois. Illinois is still a blue state, and in the primary, she's just not going to win over the majority of that target. However, it's still a threat. I mean, it wasn't even a year ago. Last summer was so contentious. The governor kept losing over and over and over. He got hammered on the abortion bill, HB 40, his backtrack on that.
That was a trick box. I mean, he almost couldn't win no matter what. He could have won with an mandatory veto, and let's give him credit there. I mean, he didn't take the coward's way out, did he?
But then, there was also the budget and the tax rate, and then the school funding and the Chicago schools. So he, his base really kind of abandoned him. Let's not forget the angry voters who called up moderate Republicans who voted with Democrats to end the budget crisis and literally, threaten them.
Sure.
So, the governor, it's...
Yeah, but if all 10,000 of those people vote for Jeannie Ives, I mean, what?
I'm not saying... I think that the governor, though, is, like Rae said, he doesn't have to directly address Jeannie Ives, but he's still feeling it, I think, behind the scenes. And so because he's got lots of money to go on TV and, attack J.B. Pritzker, it works for him both ways. Yeah. Now, I don't know if it's going to be really tough if it is a Pritzker Rauner matchup, because they both have so much baggage, so much.
Yes.
Well, I mean, let's talk about the thing with Jeannie Ives and how many people really believe that she's a Mike Madigan lackey. I mean, raise your hand. It's nobody believes that, and so you've got these ads that are just almost from outer space that would describe Jeannie Ives as in Mike Madigan's pocket. Where does it end? I mean,
I think it would benefit voters to consider that if you have a long shot candidate who has polled very low, and who, even if you really support that candidate, in this case Jeannie Ives, if you really support that candidate, I think it also benefits a voter in that position to say, if this candidate doesn't win, what is their impact on the primary, and what is their impact overall on the race, right? The real question to me as a journalist trying to deliver information in that vein is to say, okay, let's say Jeannie Ives doesn't win the primary. What's to stop her from campaigning in a lot of districts? What's to stop her from being a sort of rallying pole to a lot of the further right candidates who are also funded by Liberty PAC leader Dan Proft? There's a big swath of these candidates, right? And so if you have a big advertisement for Jeannie Ives, if you have a big push for Jeannie Ives, and you're representing a contingent of people who are very supportive of that kind of candidate, there's going to be a bigger downstate or down ballot, not downstate, but down ballot impact as a result of that. So I think it's important to look at this in context of like, whether you win or lose isn't necessarily the point. The point is, can you influence and rally that base of voters to come to the polls when their local candidate is facing a very stiff, much further right primary candidate?
And what kind of percentage does she have to poll to actually make that matter? Because if she polls 5%, then that's one thing. If she polls 30, 35, 40%, that's another thing entirely. I mean, does that matter, and where do we think she's going to end up?
I think you've got to be able to, either be a statistical analyst to really pinpoint that one, or maybe even a rocket science or Nostradamus. But I will say that, it just really depends on how much advertising money is thrown behind that, and whether or not there's a concerted effort to get a same slate of styled candidates, as we've seen in what is it, 12, 15 primary races that are Liberty funded. Yeah, so we've got that whole kind of contingent that's looking to build on that sort of Ives momentum, I think.
And that also, if Rauner is reelected, that presents a pretty big challenge to him in his, next 4 years. Like, he's already had a bumpy ride in these, in his first term.
And he hasn't been in charge, but go ahead.
It also points to, when Rauner came along in 2013, a lot of Republicans who had seen their party, I wouldn't say in shambles, but, kind of in disarray for years and years, they were like, oh, this is our saving grace. This is who we, revolve around, coalesce around is the word I was looking for. And, it's funny because we've seen now in the last 3 years since he's actually been in office, it just hasn't been the case. And the money, it turns out, isn't everything, because money will come from somewhere else, like Dan Proft or like Dick Uihlein switching alliances, if people are angry enough.
Well, who is the Rauner Base really, and how erodable is it? Certainly we've seen it erode somewhat.
We also have to, the Rauner Base in 2014 involved Democrats who were frustrated and switched over for Rauner. So, that base is presumably not going to be with him this time, because it's not like they were going into the voting booth excited, like thrilled to vote for Bruce Rauner, and so they're not going to return to him.
Well, who do you think those folks might, if they are disillusioned Democrats? Who are they voting for next week, if these disillusioned Democrats, between the ones that are running for governor in the primary?
So hard to say.
Let's get that tea kettle out and try to read the leaves here.
That's so hard to say. I feel like I've gotten texts every day this week from people being like, Hannah, who do I vote for? Because these are not political types. They're just friends that I have. Like, Hannah, who do I vote for? Or like, what is going on? Like, or is anyone else so displeased with our choices in the Democratic? Get in line. There's so many people who are just shocked at, even when there's a plethora of candidates to choose from, you still end up with really difficult choice.
Yeah, we had the State Journal Register recently endorse Chris Kennedy and actually give a fairly scathing review to Mr. Pritzker. And so, to me, I think that kind of reflects perhaps this, we really, they're almost as undecided. I'm not going to put anything on the newspaper's head, but there's just nobody who's just out there that it's theirs, it's a done deal.
And there's, at first it was, Pritzker has all this money and Pritzker can go up against Bruce Rauner, who also had the same strategy. But now it's Pritzker has all this baggage. When we count the wiretaps with Blagojevich and how close is he to Mike Madigan, and Madigan in his Me Too trying to reckon with
And
that
his
in his
response,
own.
and frankly, not to interrupt, but his response to the recent thing by the Chicago Tribune, where he said, "I'm not going to respond to that. Talk to my campaign. I know that you've been working on a story for a while." That was not something you want to hear from a
No.
gubernatorial candidate. He did not handle it well.
Definitely not.
And so moving on, because there are other races we talk about. Let's talk about the solid front runner in the Attorney General's race. That would be.
Pat Quinn, can you believe it? Because I don't think anyone else can.
Yeah, I mean, he was off the board in Vegas. That was something they weren't taking any bets on. And now he's what, 23% or something?
Something like that.
He's something like 8 points ahead of his next of the. What explains that?
I think name recognition really goes a long way in a crowded field where you don't really know any of these people. Lisa Madigan is leaving a huge vacuum behind. And your average person on the street doesn't quite know what an attorney general does. And I don't blame them, because it's a big job. It's a big office. It's a lot of responsibilities. And Lisa Madigan has kept a pretty low profile as attorney general.
Well, recently, I mean, when she was being talked about as being a gubernatorial candidate, but yeah, the last couple of years.
Yeah. And so name recognition, one. Also the nostalgia factor, I would say, because Bruce Rauner, people, like I said earlier, Democrats who switched over to vote for Bruce Rauner because they were sick of not having a leader, because they perceived in Pat Quinn that he was not a leader.
Well, people are nostalgic for George W. Bush now.
I was gonna bring up George W. Bush, and look how cute he is with his Instagram and his paintings, and that's nice. But nostalgia might play a role, and name recognition, and at least some sort of record, and maybe they remember his campaign ad where he's mowing his lawn and he's the middle class guy.
The one I remember about Pat Quinn, I probably shouldn't, was I think it was his first State of the State address.
Oh, where he didn't actually use a teleprompter?
Yeah, and he digressed into his career as soy boy. I mean, that was like, ooh, it went for a long time.
But that's also kind of his thing. Like, he is the guy with the note cards in his pocket and kind of bumbly, but a public servant with a good heart. That's his story.
Yeah, the guy we know and can trust. I mean, what has to happen? I mean, but still, we've got 43%. Undecided.
Yeah.
That's what do you do with those kinds of numbers? I mean, and how do you report on that? I mean, we're really in the final stages here. How late do we expect to be up on election night?
It's going to be a wild one. Are you going to be reporting from the board?
I don't know yet.
Yeah.
It's going to be late, though, I think.
I think it's going to be intense to get through the AG race at least. I mean, I know that the primary for the Democratic governors is going to keep us up pretty late. It's going to be a long count, but the AG race, it's become such a gamble that I'm just clearing the decks for Wednesday. I'm clearing the decks. I'm just going to have to sit there and probably very much like our viewers just be in awe for a little while and counting with my tallies and reporting it out.
It's interesting if someone, if a big money backer had maybe gotten behind someone earlier, or if a major union or other group had gotten behind. It's just been a lot of, maybe how campaigns used to be before, giant money took over the airwaves all the time. But it's hard because we've got 9 candidates on the Democratic side.
Well, and Quinn got a pretty good head start because he had what was left over as political fund, which I think was at least a couple $100,000 for a primary. That's a good jump start. So, I mean, quickly, 13th congressional. Have you done any thinking about that? Rodney Davis, and we got 5 Democrats, which frankly I'm having trouble telling apart from each other. They seem to be not attacking each other as much as they are Trump and Mr. Davis. We got a Londrigan in the mix. We've got David Gill in the mix, who's run several times. Any guesses about what might happen there?
You got a big margin to overcome. You got a big margin to overcome. No matter how great of a Democrat you are, no matter how good of a campaign you run, there's a as far as the people that I've talked to from that area, and Hannah, I don't know if you've been talking to those folks too, because what I'm hearing is just you can't really necessarily count 2016, Trump momentum for all races, because presidential obviously will influence a great deal. But at the same time, the margin is wide enough where, it's going to take a massive push to get any Democrat across the line there.
Well, I mean, we got Pennsylvania that happened on Tuesday.
Excellent point.
That's.
I haven't heard anything salacious about Mr. Davis, though.
Yeah.
Is the thing.
Well,
Pretty wholesome.
if you try to compare him to the commander-in-chief, that's a pretty high bar. So,
I would say.
Yeah, I mean, politics aren't the only thing that's happened in the state capitol. It's important. We've also got this week the governor vetoed a gun bill that would have required state licensure for gun dealers. This happened on the same day that students nationwide walked out of the recent tragedy in Florida. We had state legislators walk out yesterday as well in marking that. How much of this is politics? How much of this is real? This veto of that Rauner has done, is that a political marker, or is that just something that he truly believes? Let's talk about that for a second. The bill would have required gun dealers to get licenses, and among other things, it would have required security, certain minimum levels of security to be in these gun stores, and that might be an important issue here in Springfield. We've had a couple of gun burglaries recently, one in which well in excess of 50 firearms were stolen, some of which ended up in street crimes. Is this going to be overridden? And if it's not overridden, what is it? What does that mean?
Hannah, what's your take on this? I ask you because you've seen Harmon working this bill for as long as it's, for the last while now.
Mm-hmm. And this gun dealer licensing one, that was supposed to be the easy one of the group.
Yeah.
It went halfway last year, and because of the recent shooting in Parkland, Florida, it had momentum. It's, unlike other shootings in recent memory, it wasn't just the whole news cycle of thoughts and prayers and we're done.
Yeah.
So, these kids in Florida, they have really kept up their media game. They've got, money and support behind their movement, and there's a hashtag, and that there should be sociological studies done on the power of a hashtag. Anyway.
Agreed.
So the gun dealer licensing bill, the governor didn't take a side for a while. It's kind of a classic Rauner move to say, well, I'm considering it. Maybe we'll set up a bipartisan coalition. That really what that does.
He did, I think, he has set up committees to study this.
Yeah.
Has he not?
So,
Good for him.
he passes that. Yes, that is a good thing to study. But commissions are notoriously slow. You might argue that every piece of legislation should go through a thorough vetting, but a lot of people are asking for quick action because this has been such a pervasive problem. Anyway, the gun licensing bill, it got 30 votes in the Senate and 64 in the House. That's not a good sign for an attempt to override the governor's veto. And for that to, it's neither here nor there when you consider the large picture of, people actually dying from gun violence. But because of parliamentary moves, the earliest a veto override attempt could be done is in April. So it'll be before the primary.
Okay. Well, after the primary.
That is, sorry.
And we saw Rauner sort of foreshadow this, right? What was it, day before yesterday or something to that effect? He was doing the press conference. He was up in Chicago, and he was saying, I want to see a slate of bills about this. I want to see a whole package of bills about this. But then I think it was someone was asking him, a reporter was asking him specifically about it, and he sort of kind of kept it cloudy, And so I think a lot of eyebrows got raised there. There was several. This gun dealer licensing bill. A lot of people don't realize that Senator Don Harmon has been working this bill for ages. We're talking about committee after committee after committee, public hearings, invitations to discuss this on a local level. You can't say the bill didn't get worked, and that goes for representatives of the National Rifle Association who were the primary opposition, and also who have been invited over and over and over again to bring an amendment to the table about this, to offer some kind of language or some kind of place of compromise. One of the most interesting ones, I think, really boiled it to a head, was the subject matter hearing that took place in Chicago a couple days ago, where you've got Senator Kwame Raoul, you've got Senator Harmon there, and they're engaged in what amounted to a 2-hour discussion about, a suite of bills, but primarily about this licensing bill. Their big draw out at the end of the day was that they couldn't get any kind of language offered for a compromise on this bill. All the other bills, compromise language allowed, offered, brought in, back and forth. It's very rare to see somebody like Don Harmon, who as a legislator, whether you're a Republican or Democrat, there's a handful of legislators that you can say, this person really works very hard to bring in opposite sides. He's definitely one of those people, if you watch him in committee, he really wants to make a bill work. He wants to do pragmatic things, or at least that would be what the appearance would suggest. And this is one of the few times I've really seen him just kind of finally get upset with it and finally just, say, hey, we've got to do something about this, come to the table here.
Yeah, I mean, at some point there's a brick wall, I think, perhaps, is what he was saying. And you're looking at this, and Illinois has historically been on the tail end of gun rights sorts of things. I mean, I believe we were the last state to enact concealed carry, pretty much with the Supreme Court's ruling in a gun case.
Seventh Circuit.
Yeah, a gun to the head, so to speak.
Yeah.
And so that's the only reason we were the last, or second to last, I can't recall. And now problems getting a gun dealership license in effect. There was something, I think, on bump stocks yesterday, raising the age of purchasing of certain firearms.
Yep, you got 3 of those bills. And
you got 3 of those bills.
Increasing the waiting period.
And are those real laws, real proposals, or is that just political fodder for campaigns?
Why not both, right? Why not both? You can come out ahead of the gun debate, ahead of a primary, by definitely taking some action on something, whether or not it has a chance to fly. But at the same time, there's no gun bill that you can put out. You could put out a 2-sentence gun bill, and there's no gun bill that you can put out as a Democrat or a Republican that isn't going to get hashed out and chopped up in a committee. So I definitely hear the Republican opposition speaking yesterday, particularly from Senator Dale Ryder and Senator Chris Nybo, who even spoke at the walkout that they had in support of those students. But these bills are definitely going to get hashed up in committee one way or another. So it's kind of impossible. There's no such thing as a perfect gun bill. Anything you have, really, it's going to get it's going to go through the process. And I think that's one of the better parts of a legislative strategy, whether you're Republican or Democrat. If you, instead of doing a big, huge bombshell bill, you chop them up and put a few out there. That way people can start the conversation about different aspects of gun control, as opposed to trying to, eat the elephant in one bite, so to speak.
And with that, we are out of time. And so thanks again for joining us on Capitol View. We will see you next week.